Yes, so this year I found out something that the Office for National Statistics do, which is a category of well-being called high happiness.
Hmm.
And that's people who answer the happiness question with a score of 7, 8, 9, or 10 out of 10.
Okay.
And it just struck me it would be a good idea to identify how many people we had that fitted in that category and to try and identify what the differences were between them and the average respondents. And there were notable differences. It was definitely a worthwhile exercise, and it gives a lot of indicators as to how we can improve the situation that we've got at the moment. Um, so, looking at the questions we ask about support from all areas of life, so friends, family, colleagues, employer, boss, stakeholders that people work with in their job, um, the levels of support that the high happiness people expected was very similar. It wasn't dissimilar at all to the average.
Okay.
But in every single case, the support that they received was higher uh,
Okay.
than the average, and also it exceeded their expectation. So their
Okay.
expectations of support are being exceeded, whereas the average is under that. Most people don't
Okay.
get the support that they're expecting, with the exception of friends and family. Every area of their working life, on average, people feel under supported. Um, the high happiness people were much more likely to be offered flexible working arrangements by their employer.
Okay.
Um, and their perception of their workload was slightly lower. I mean, it was 6 out of 10 rather than 7 out of 10. So not a
Okay.
huge
Okay.
difference, but a
Yeah.
little bit lower. But they were still working a 45-hour week. So, by no stretch of the imagination are high happiness people happy because it's somehow an easy ride. They've got pressure. They've got long working hours. Um, they were significantly more likely to believe that their employer took genuine action on well-being than the average as
Okay.
well. And that question has kind of become a default question for, does my employer care?
Yeah. Yeah.
And it was a lot higher for people in the high happiness category. Probably the craziest statistic this year was that there were a few physical assaults on staff that were logged,
Shoot.
but all of the people in the high happiness group, or sorry, all of the people who'd been physically assaulted were also high happiness people. Um, and
Wow.
that really got us thinking, and we've talked to people about, do you identify with the high happiness persona? Can you relate to it? And a lot of people kind of see it as a decision. I just decided that I was going to have a positive outlook. I just decided that this stuff wasn't going
Mm.
to let me down. That's not in the survey. That's kind of like anecdotal things that we've done from
Sure.
presentation
Sure.
of the results and talking to groups and things like that as a result. Um, so when you look at high happiness in the round, you've
Yep.
got people who believe they're receiving better support. They've got
Yep.
flexible arrangements. Their workload pressure feels manageable. They feel like they've got an employer who cares. Um, they were slightly more likely to have lower personal financial pressure as well.
Okay.
And the cost of living crisis has affected everybody, but
Yeah.
the high happiness people felt that their personal finances were not particularly pressured. Um, and when you add all those things together, it's nothing profound. It's not rocket science. All those things kind of make sense that you're likely to
Yeah.
feel happier if those are your circumstances. But when you add them up, the result is that only 10% of that high happiness group see themselves as leaving property management in the next 3 years. So it actually
Okay.
makes a really big difference to the sector's ability to retain staff, to retain talent
Yeah.
in the sector.
Yeah. That's really interesting, actually. So we do a thing within CPL, and I did it in my other business that I sold last year as well, which is a thing called Friday Pulse. I don't know if you've come across it or if we've probably spoken about it before, actually. And basically, you just measure the level of happiness, rate it 1 to 5 on a weekly basis, and really. I guess what you're looking for is not necessarily, we don't measure happiness. We measure engagement in the survey every week. But what we do measure is if it's low, then it can be low. Shit happens in life, right? People
Hmm.
can have a bad week, but it's about the resilience and how it comes back up that really you're looking to measure. And actually, it's something that we talk about every week as well. Every week we look at it, we talk about it, we look at possibly what the reasons were the previous week that these things happened. So I think personally, I think it's a great thing to look at on a
Hmm.
regular basis. Yeah,
Yeah, 100%. I mean, we since merging with Armour and the Property Institute coming together, we do a pulse survey with our own staff on a
yeah,
regular basis, and it is really important to get a big and representative turnout for those surveys. And I
yeah,
think it's just
yeah.
something that good businesses do these days.
Hmm. Okay, interesting. Okay, so I guess that moves us on to any major changes since the last report.
So in terms of the core data, the core questions, it's very consistent over the
Okay.
years that we've run the survey. Um, that this is a sector that is under pressure and is
Yeah.
really feeling the strain. We've got the long working hours, high levels of workload pressure, people leaving the sector, meaning that the same portfolio then has to be divided between a smaller number
Yeah.
of people. And I think the sector has worked out that this is a downward spiral. And I can see lots of organisations that are taking steps to counter that and to really prioritise their staff. And that's a necessary step because trying to get people, the war for talent, is the number one issue in business globally. Um, Looking at the high happiness respondents was something that we wanted to do, to
Yeah.
try and identify, what the differences were. Um, and another thing that we did this year as well is say, well, hey, what do you enjoy about property management? What are the elements of the job that you love? And we got some really good verbatim feedback. We word clouded it. We did some analysis on it, and we came up with three core things really that we think people value.